Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on something pretty intense. We're looking at worldviews, philosophies that are presented in the sources you've sent as being locked in this ultimate struggle.
Yeah, it's framed as much more than just politics or economics. The material really pushes us towards seeing it as a kind of, well, a metaphysical war.
Exactly, a metaphysical war. And our task here, as always, is to integrate these sources you provided. They lay out this profound conflict, really raw and unfiltered. On one side, you have the architects of what's called modern dissolution Marx, Adorno, Gramsci.
And on the other, this countervision, this metaphysical resistance found in traditionalism, people like Evola, even drawing on Nietzsche in a specific way. Our mission is to map this out, to create a single cohesive system from these colliding perspectives.
We're aiming for the deep connective tissue, moving past the surface arguments about policy or social trends right down to the bedrock. The sources are asking us to look at the ontology of it all.
Which means looking at how each side defines reality itself. What is a human being? What is meaning? What is the world, fundamentally?
So the core question driving us today is really this. To what extent are the crises we see, the fragmentation, the anxiety, the breakdown, rooted in what the sources call an inversion of the sacred?
Right. Is it a deliberate turning upside down of traditional values and spiritual connection? The sources definitely argue that way. They paint this picture of two opposing forces, two worlds almost.
You have the horizontal world, flat, material, focused on sociology, economics.
And the vertical world, ascending, spiritual, hierarchical, connected to something transcendent, something they often call the logos or tradition.
It's a huge undertaking. This is a study of worldviews at their most fundamental, the hidden gnosis, you could say, of both sides.
Definitely. So where do we begin? To understand the conflict, we probably need to start by mapping out the system of dissolution first. The machinery of collapse, as the sources seem to frame it.
Okay, let's do that. The sources suggest we shouldn't look at Marx, Gramsci, and the Frankfurt School as totally separate figures. They present them as, well, as interconnected parts of a single engine designed for cultural change, or maybe even subversion.
The starting point, the absolute foundation, according to this material, is Karl Marx. He's labeled the reductionist.
Reductionist meaning?
Meaning he reduces everything down. Specifically, he denies any inherent spiritual or metaphysical dimension to human existence. Man is basically just a product of his economic conditions. Your consciousness, your beliefs, your values, they're all determined by your class position, by the material world.
So spirit, transcendence, religion, all dismissed.
Completely. Either it's opium for the masses, a tool to keep people passive, or it's just an illusion created by the ruling class. There's no room for inherent human nobility or spiritual striving in that model. It's purely material.
That's a profound shift in thinking about humanity. What happens then when you try to build a society on that foundation? What are the historical consequences presented in the sources?
Well, the sources are pretty blunt. They argue the Marxist utopia, the classless society, is a ghost that never arrives.
Why? Because it ignores something fundamental.
Exactly. Because it demands, essentially, the suppression of what the sources call human grandeur. Things like ambition, the drive for excellence, the desire to achieve something beyond just material needs. These things get in the way of forced equality.
So trying to enforce that equality leads to...
Historically, the sources point to places like the Soviet Union, Mao's China, Cambodia under Pol Pot, Venezuela, and they say the result isn't paradise, but things like institutionalized exploitation, mass graves, gulags, and bureaucratic despotism. Really stark language.
It sounds like the critique here is less about economics failing and more about a flawed understanding of human nature itself. They even call Marxism a cult of envy, dressed in academic jargon. What's the idea behind that phrase?
The argument is that the real driving force isn't necessarily a desire for justice, but envy. Resentment towards those who have achieved more or are perceived as superior in some way, competence, virtue, whatever.
And the salvation it offers is leveling.
Yes.
Yeah.
You achieve salvation not by improving yourself, not by internal discipline or ascent, but by bringing everyone else down to the same level, usually through state power. It promises paradise by erasing difference, which, the sources argue, ultimately means erasing value, excellence, and the individual spirit. It weaponizes resentment.
Okay, so if Marx laid that reductionist groundwork, the sources then turn to Antonio Gramsci. He's presented as the strategist, the one who figured out how to make these ideas take root culturally.
That's a really critical point in the narrative these sources build. Gramsci, writing from prison, apparently realized something crucial,
Which was?
that Western workers weren't really buying into the communist revolution based on economics alone. They had deeper loyalties to their culture, their religion, their nation, their families.
So the economic struggle wasn't enough.
Right. The battlefield had to shift. Not the factories, but the institutions that shape culture and meaning. Universities, the media, the arts, schools, even language itself. If Marx wanted to seize the means of production,
Gramsci wanted to seize the means of meaning.
precisely. And that leads to his famous concept, the long march through the institutions. It's a slow, patient takeover. Not a violent revolution, but a gradual infiltration and transformation of the cultural nervous system.
And a key part of this, according to the sources, is manipulating language. They call it semiotic warfare, language as a sorcerer's tool. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, this is fascinating. The idea is that you don't just change policies, you change the meaning of the words people use. You alter the connotations, the emotional weight, the underlying assumptions embedded in language.
How does that work in practice? Can you give an example from the sources?
Sure. They point to terms like toxic masculinity. The traditional idea of masculinity may be strength. Protection suddenly gets this layer of poison attached to it, making its very expression suspect. Or the shift from equality, meaning equal opportunity, to equity, which demands equal outcomes.
That subtly changes the whole goal, doesn't it?
Completely. It shifts the moral landscape. And the sources argue this creates a kind of soft totalitarianism. You don't need overt censorship if you can make people self-censor. If using the wrong word makes you socially unacceptable or professionally vulnerable.
Then language itself becomes the police force, the tyranny of the tongue, as they put it.
Exactly. Linguistic conformity becomes a moral battleground. Your choice of words signals your allegiance or lack thereof.
Okay, that's a powerful mechanism. So Marx reduces man to matter. Gramsci targets the cultural language. Where do Adorno and the Frankfurt School fit into this picture? They provide the intellectual ammunition.
That's how the sources frame it. If Gramsci gave the strategy, the Frankfurt School, particularly through critical theory, provided the arsenal. This arsenal, the sources stress, is designed almost purely for deconstruction, for taking things apart, not building them up.
Like a permanent critique.
Essentially, yes. Adorno, in particular, is presented as deeply pessimistic, almost aesthetically so. The idea is that everything produced by Western civilization is inherently flawed, tainted, guilty. Clarity, beauty, structure, and art or music, these are suspect, maybe even fascistic illusions.
Even Beethoven.
Apparently so. The sources mention his critique of Beethoven's clarity. Adorno seemed to argue that only ugly, fragmented, dissonant art could be true because it reflected what he saw as a fractured, oppressive reality.
And his method, negative dialectics, it just keeps critiquing. No endpoint.
Pretty much. It's an endless process of unmasking, revealing hidden power dynamics, hidden flaws. But it never arrives at a positive synthesis. It's critique for its own sake, almost. Pure subtraction, as you said.
It sounds intellectually exhausting.
Or paralyzing. And that this isn't just abstract theory. Figures like Herbert Marcuse translated this into social strategy with ideas like repressive tolerance.
Repressive tolerance. That sounds like a contradiction.
It is. The argument, quite chillingly, is that genuine tolerance might require being intolerant of views that support the existing oppressive order. So, free speech should be suppressed if it upholds traditional values.
Wow. So tolerance becomes a weapon against dissent.
That's the claim made in the sources, turning a core liberal value against itself to silence opposition.
Okay, let's pull these threads together for this first part. Marx strips the soul, reduces everything to matter. Gramsci focuses on capturing culture through language. Adorno and the Frankfurt School provide this relentless critique that destabilizes everything. What's the end result for the individual living within this system?
The sources paint a picture of the therapeutic subject. This is someone who's constantly anxious, maybe feels, well, neutered, unsure. They're dependent on external systems, experts, media, institutions for validation, for knowing what to think and feel.
And riddled with guilt.
Guilt seems key. Guilt for any natural strength or ambition, shame for your own traditions or heritage, fear of excellence because it implies inequality. It's described as a kind of engineered spiritual exhaustion designed to prevent you from becoming, well, sovereign in yourself.
All right, that's a heavy framework for the forces of dissolution. Let's pause there because the next step, according to the sources, takes us beyond politics and sociology entirely.
Right. We have to shift gears now into pure metaphysics. The sources insist this isn't just about competing ideologies. It's a fundamental war for the soul, playing out through spiritual inversion. We're at that metaphysical chasm we talked about.
The difference isn't just opinion, it's about the nature of reality itself.
Exactly. We touched on it. Marx sees man defined by matter. Adorno sees man trapped by culture and guilt. But the countervision, someone like Evola, sees man as fundamentally oriented towards transcendence.
So it's horizontal versus vertical, matter versus spirit.
That's the core dichotomy presented, the horizontal world. Sociology, economics, data, the average, the collective, the vertical world. Spirit, hierarchy based on inner quality, connection to the divine, the logos.
Logos, that word keeps coming up. It sounds important, but maybe a bit abstract. In this traditionalist context, the sources describe what exactly is the logos.
Think of it as the underlying principle of order in reality. It's the divine reason, the structure, the meaning woven into the fabric of existence. It's what gives things coherence, purpose, hierarchy. It's like spiritual gravity, maybe.
Okay, so it provides structure and meaning. And the modern system, by focusing only on the horizontal,
Actively rejects the logos, rejects that vertical dimension. This, from the traditionalist perspective outlined in the sources, isn't just an error. It's seen as anti-logos. It leads inevitably to chaos, to entropy, to meaninglessness.
And the sources go further. They don't just say this rejection is atheistic. They link it to something darker, a Luciferian or Ahrimanic impulse. They even quote some early, quite disturbing writings from Marx himself.
Yes, poems like The Player, where he writes about things like hellish vapors filling the brain and a pact with the Prince of Darkness. The sources use this to argue the driving force isn't just secularism, but something actively anti-theistic.
Trying to replace the divine with man or the state?
Or with ideology itself.
Hmm.
The whole system, Marxism and its descendants, is framed as an inverted metaphysics, a counter-initiation.
Counter-initiation. Meaning it mimics religion but twists it.
That's the idea. It's parasitic on sacred forms. It offers its own versions. A new Eden, the classless utopia. A new original sin, maybe class division or historical oppression. A new Messiah, the proletariat or the enlightened activist. A new paradise, the perfect future society.
So it hijacks that spiritual longing,
But fills it with purely material political content. It promises salvation through external revolution, through changing the system, rather than through difficult internal spiritual work.
Now, the sources make an interesting distinction here between Luciferian and Ahrimanic forces behind this. Luciferian we might associate with pride, rebellion against God. But Ahrimanic, what is that?
In the esoteric framework presented, Ahriman is different. It's not fiery rebellion. It's the spirit of cold, deadening materialism. It's calculation, systemization, bureaucracy, technology stripped of spirit. It's the force that wants to bind humanity completely to the material world, eliminating mystery, spontaneity, soul.
It enters disguised as rationality.
Exactly. As efficiency, as data, as control.
Oh.
It leads, the sources say, to the worship of the machine idol, or the synthetic idol.
And this isn't just a metaphor for, like, red tape. It's something deeper.
It seems to be pointing towards the spiritual vacuum created by reducing everything to data, algorithms, and predictable systems. Think about the illusion of choice in a data-driven world they mention. You have endless options for consumption.
Scrolling, streaming.
Right. Auto-tuned music designed for addiction, reality TV engineered for distraction. It feels like choice, but it's a curated synthetic environment that keeps you occupied, prevents deep reflection, prevents accessing that vertical dimension. It's control through noise and distraction.
Which sounds like the ultimate goal is silencing the spirit, the triumph of noise and the eclipse of logos. If logos is order, what happens when noise takes over?
The sources say modernity is defined by the destruction of the axis mundi.
Okay, let's define that. Axis mundi.
It literally means axis of the world. It's the symbolic center, the sacred mountain, the temple, the cathedral spire that connects the earthly realm to the heavens, the visible to the invisible. It's the point of orientation.
And if that's obliterated,
Then the world becomes flat, spiritually speaking. There's no up or down, no shared sacred reference point. Everything becomes relative, shifting, temporary. The vertical connection is lost.
and into that vacuum comes noise.
Yes, not just literal noise, but informational chaos, constant outrage, profanity disguised as authenticity, the sheer overwhelming volume of meaningless stimuli. It replaces the serene song of civitas, the underlying harmony of a well-ordered society.
And language gets dragged down too.
Critically, it loses its connection to the logos, to expressing truth or deeper meaning. Instead, it becomes, as we discussed with Gramsci, a tool for control, for enforcing conformity, for inducing guilt. The tyranny of the tongue again. When a culture is obsessed with policing every word,
It loses the ability to think clearly, to create, to access anything deeper.
that's the danger highlighted. Spiritual exhaustion sets in, driven by the constant management of language and the fear of transgression.
Okay, that paints a very comprehensive, maybe even disturbing picture of the forces of dissolution as presented in these sources.
Yeah.
Now, against all this horizontal flattening, this noise, this inversion, we need to bring in the counterforce. Julius Evola, the metaphysical lightning bolt.
Exactly. Evola's response, as outlined, is not reformist. It's a radical rejection, a revolt against the modern world, as his famous book title says.
And his starting point is completely different. He doesn't see modernity as progress at all.
Not in the slightest. He views it through the lens of Hindu cosmology, actually, as the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, the Dark Age. It's the final stage of a cosmic cycle, characterized by decline, materialism, chaos, and the loss of spiritual connection. What others call progress, Evola sees as disintegration.
So he offers both a diagnosis of the illness and a path for those who want to resist it.
Yes, and central to his path is the concept of tradition. We need to be clear here, like the sources are. Tradition for Evola isn't just nostalgia for the past, like wanting to wear powdered wigs or something.
It's something deeper, metaphysical.
Enter the metaphysical. Tradition, with a capital T, is that vertical axis. It's the timeless, unchanging spiritual order, the hierarchy of being that connects humanity back to the divine source. It's the perennial wisdom underlying all authentic civilizations before the modern decline.
So his focus is entirely on restoring that interconnection.
Precisely. Because the modern world, in his view, is designed to sever it. If Marx and Adorno chain man to matter and guilt, Evola wants to, as the sources put it, lift man back to the throne of the metaphysical self.
Which involves embracing hierarchy. That's a controversial word.
It is, but for Evola, it's primarily a spiritual hierarchy. It's recognizing that reality isn't flat. There are different levels of being, different degrees of spiritual realization. It's not about imposing social tyranny, but acknowledging an order rooted in the nature of existence itself.
And this leads to the ideal figure he champions, the differentiated man.
Uomo differenziato, yes. This is the individual who stands apart from the masses, not out of snobbery, but because he has cultivated inner sovereignty. He resists the leveling tendencies of modernity, maintains his connection to the vertical axis, even when the world around him is collapsing.
So it's not about changing the world externally.
Not primarily, especially not in the Kali Yuga. Evola seemed to think that was largely futile. The goal is internal transformation, forging an invincible soul amid the ruins. He wasn't writing for everyone. He was writing for the few capable of this path.
The ones who can ride the tiger, what does that mean?
It means you don't try to fight the chaos head-on because it's too powerful. Instead, you achieve such perfect inner balance and control that you can ride the chaotic forces without being destroyed by them. You use the danger itself, maintaining your center.
It sounds incredibly demanding, almost aristocratic, but in a spiritual sense. The sources also link this figure to Nietzsche's Übermensch. How does Evola use Nietzsche without falling into just pure rebellion or nihilism?
That's a key point. He gives Nietzsche's concept a metaphysical grounding. The Übermensch, the overman, isn't just someone who throws off old values. For Evola, this figure achieves mastery by aligning his disciplined will with the vertical, with tradition. It's achieved through intense inner work, solitude, silence, enduring trials, a kind of metaphysical rebellion against the modern spirit itself.
So strength, but channeled upwards, towards the transcendent, not just outwards in defiance.
Exactly. Sublimation, not just rebellion. The goal is a higher state of being, rooted in something eternal, not just a stronger version of the purely human ego.
Okay, this is where it gets really practical, almost like a manual. If Evola defines what this inner sovereignty, the sources then seem to outline the how, a detailed path for the individual to actually build this inner fortress.
Yes, moving from philosophy to application. And the core archetype here is the warrior mystic,
Warrior mystic, why both?
because it combines action and contemplation, discipline, and spiritual insight. The sources emphasize that the true warrior's primary battlefield isn't external, but internal. The fight is against inner chaos, weakness, fear, doubt.
So the goal isn't worldly victory, but self-mastery, making your body and mind instruments of a higher law, of the logos.
Precisely. Your life becomes a form of active discipline, a ritual, and this requires a very specific inner attitude, completely counter to the modern therapeutic mindset.
What are the key elements of that attitude?
First, silence. Not just shutting up, but cultivating inner stillness, resisting the urge to constantly react, to be pulled around by thoughts and external noise. A deep, receptive silence. Discipline without drama. You train, you practice, whether it's physical or mental, because the path demands it. Not for show, not seeking praise or validation, just steady, consistent effort.
And the third one sounds the toughest, voluntary suffering.
Absolutely. Modernity tries to eliminate all discomfort. This path, as described, sees pain, hardship, ordeal, not as things to be avoided at all costs, but as necessary tools, the hammer that forges the spirit.
You have to willingly face difficulty to be transformed.
That's the idea. Sacrifice is essential. It builds resilience, burns away impurities. It leads to the fourth quality, unbreakable stillness. When everything outside is falling apart, betrayal, crisis, chaos, the warrior mystic holds his center. He's untouched by panic because he's built an inner order stronger than the outer disorder.
Okay, that's the mindset. But the sources go deeper into what sounds like actual spiritual mechanics. They talk about the three fires energies that need to be transmuted.
Yeah, this is the core alchemical process described. It starts at the base with the earth fire, or Terran Vitalis. This is your raw primal energy. Instinct, survival drive, vitality, untamed. It's just chaos.
The transmuted.
Through discipline, it becomes rootedness, resilience, a kind of inner gravity, a solid foundation. You master the earth element within yourself.
Then comes the solar fire, Sol Invictus.
This is the fire of the will, of honor, action, and detachment. Think of the focused energy of the traditional warrior caste. It's about directed power, clarity, the ability to act decisively without ego or emotional turmoil. It's a burning way of weakness.
And the highest fire.
The celestial fire, or etheric flame. This isn't fiery passion. It's pure stillness, clear perception, almost like cool, luminous insight. It's the fire of the sage or the seer. It provides the wisdom and perspective to guide the other two fires.
So the goal is to harmonize all three. Earth for grounding, solar for action, celestial for guidance.
Exactly. A balanced, integrated inner hierarchy of energies, which is the exact opposite of the chaotic, flattened state encouraged by modern dissolution.
And to achieve this balance, the individual needs to ascend the 7 gates. This sounds like a step-by-step inner journey.
It is. Presented as an internal ladder you have to climb, where each gate represents mastering a specific aspect of your being, overcoming the untamed energies associated with it. Each gate is a fortress to be seized within yourself.
Where does it start?
At the absolute foundation, the gate of bone. This is about mastering the physical body, conquering basic physical fear, inertia, the resistance to pain. Victory here gives you that inner gravity, that undeniable physical presence and resilience.
So command over the physical self, rooting out fear at its most basic level. What's next?
The gate of iron. This corresponds to the solar fire. It's about mastering ambition, anger, the drive for power and recognition. The challenge is to wield this fire without being consumed by ego.
To act powerfully, but from principle, not vanity.
Precisely. Victory yields solar kingship, a natural authority that comes from within, from honor and self-mastery, not from external position. You lead because of who you are.
And then the gate of ether, moving beyond the purely physical and volitional.
Yes. This is about mastering inner space, achieving a kind of cosmic detachment, the void gaze. It's about finding peace and stillness, but a stillness that's potent, ready for action, not stagnant.
And mastery here.
Yields a presence that can subtly influence reality. You start operating from a place of deep certainty, seeing the patterns, acting with precision that comes from that stillness.
And the final gate, the gate of return.
This represents total self-command. The sources describe it as sacred emptiness or annihilation without dissolution. The personal ego is gone, transcended, but the core spiritual self is fully present, acting as a clear channel for the logos, for that vertical principle. It's the ultimate inner victory.
It's a very structured path. To make it even more concrete, the sources use specific mythic archetypes, not just concepts, but figures you're meant to embody.
Right. These aren't gods to be worshipped, but states of being to be achieved. The first guardian, embodying that foundational discipline, is the ascetic of iron.
What's his role?
He's pure, relentless discipline. He crushes excuses, embraces hardship like armor. There's no softness there. His job is to build the unshakable foundation, the inner gravity, through sheer willpower and purification.
Then, tapping into the solar fire, you have the solar hero.
This is the radiant figure, the conqueror of inner dragons, laziness, doubt, fear. He embodies visible nobility, ethical action, leadership through example. His presence inspires and orders. He's the peak of active virtue.
And then a figure that sounds quite different, the silent slayer.
Yes, this embodies detachment and precision in action. While the hero might fight glorious battles, the Slayer acts out of necessity, with perfect economy of force, without ego, without leaving a trace. He operates beyond praise or blame, pure, detached execution of what must be done.
Very focused. And the final archetype, the culmination.
The Skywatcher. This is the adept who has integrated all the stages. He sees the great pattern, the logos in action. He acts from complete stillness, commanding reality subtly, perhaps through intention, focus, even breath. He doesn't just react. He initiates action from a place of deep cosmic understanding.
So the ultimate goal is to become a living embodiment of this restored vertical order, a functional myth in a dissolving world.
That seems to be the highest potential presented in these sources.
Yeah.
An unshakable anchor of perennial truth in an age of chaos.
That's quite a journey we've mapped out, from Marxist materialist reductionism all the way to the inner alchemy of the Skywatcher. So, bringing it all together, how do the sources frame the ultimate conflict? It's clearly not just left versus right.
No, that's seen as surface-level distraction. The real battle, according to this integrated system, is much deeper. It's time versus eternity. It's man versus self, this struggle for inner mastery. It's entropy versus ascent.
And the modern system, the machine idol built by those forces of dissolution.
Offers, ultimately, a form of enslavement. Enslavement to ideology, to therapeutic control, to material comfort that deadens the spirit. It flattens existence, drains it of meaning, mystery, and the potential for transcendence.
While the traditionalist path, embodied by Evola and this warrior mystic system,
Offers the possibility of inner liberation, even amid external decay. It's the path of the regal initiate demanding solitude, rigorous discipline, the forging of that inner diamond body, the resurrection of the spirit against the downward pull of the age. The empire to be conquered is within.
so the conclusion isn't about fixing the world.
Not directly. The sources seem to suggest that trying to save the world through external means in this era might be impossible. But the individual soul can be awakened, can be forged, can achieve sovereignty. And paradoxically, the very darkness of the age, dissolution itself, creates the conditions for this initiation.
The pressure forces a choice.
Exactly. When the structures dissolve, the essence is revealed. The age of dissolution becomes the threshold of initiation for those willing to undertake the inner work.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener, drawing directly from this challenging material. The core of this entire conflict seems to be the struggle to rebuild that vertical axis within yourself. So ask yourself, what aspect of that solar masculine ideal presented here, whether it's authority rooted in being, not ego, radiance and nobility without arrogance, or potent stillness that isn't passive? What aspect of that do you need to reforge within yourself? How can you become an unshakable pillar of inner order in this time of increasing entropy? The choice the sources suggest is stark. Be shaped by the chaos or become an architect of your own inner cosmos. Sursum Corda, lift up your hearts.